Ever think about like how filmmakers create believable alien worlds? Especially when they don't have a lot of money to work with.
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into a film that did just that. The 1959 sci-fi classic, The Angry Red Planet.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
It's become a cult classic, known for its unique visual style and those really memorable monsters.
All done on a pretty tiny budget.
Exactly.
It really shows you how limitations can sometimes, push creativity in new directions.
Absolutely. So the movie follows this crude mission to Mars, but their trip home turns into a fight for survival against some pretty terrifying creatures.
Right. And they shot the entire film in just 9 days
9 days.
on a budget of just $200,000.
Wow. That's an incredibly tight schedule, even for 1959.
Definitely. It really shows you the resourcefulness of these filmmakers.
So to save money, they came up with this technique they called CineMagic.
CineMagic.
Yeah, imagine like overexposing black and white film, and then they used a process called solarization to create this kind of ghostly image.
Oh, yeah. Solarization, for those who are wondering, it involves re-exposing the film to light during development.
Okay, so you get these really unique ethereal effects.
Exactly. And by using CineMagic, they could actually bypass the need for those expensive positive film prints.
Oh, wow. So that was a major cost saver back then.
It's huge.
And it gives this really surreal, dreamlike quality to the Martian scenes.
Yeah, it's not very realistic, but it definitely gives the film this very distinct look and feel.
It almost feels like you're stepping into a fever dream.
Right. And, this visual style actually plays into some of the themes of the film.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the 1950s were a time of like heightened Cold War anxieties and, that fear of the unknown.
Of something alien?
Yeah, potentially dangerous. It really comes through in those Martian landscapes.
So it's not just a visual gimmick.
Not at all.
It's actually tapping into like a cultural feeling.
Exactly. That sense of unease that was very much in the air at the time.
And it's all the more impressive when you consider they pulled it off without any big budget special effects.
Right. They used clever tricks and techniques instead.
Like what?
Well, remember that 40-foot-tall rat-bat spider monster?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget that thing? It's like one of the most iconic creatures in the film.
Well, believe it or not, that terrifying behemoth was actually just a 15-inch marionette.
Get out of here. No way.
It is. It's a great example of how they use practical effects to their advantage.
That's incredible.
They also had this giant amoeba and a carnivorous plant.
Oh, right.
All created with ingenuity and a little bit of movie magic.
And we can't forget about how they use stock footage to save even more money.
Absolutely. They used footage of Atlas rocket launches, but they played it in reverse.
To show the return to Earth.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They even used footage from a V-2 rocket for the landing sequence on Mars.
Wow, so they really were working with what they had.
They're making it work.
It really goes to show you don't always need a ton of money to create something visually striking.
Absolutely. It's a real testament to their resourcefulness.
Speaking of making things work,
Yeah.
we've got to talk about their use of color, or should I say lack of color on Mars.
Right. Those Martian scenes were shot in black and white and then solarized and tinted either red or blue.
Yeah, it gives them this otherworldly, almost eerie feel.
It really does.
What-
And again, this decision was partly driven by budget.
Oh, right, because color film was more expensive back then.
Much more expensive. But just like with CineMagic, they turned that limitation into a stylistic choice that really defines the movie.
It's kind of interesting, though. You'd think a black and white Mars might have turned off audiences back then.
Yeah, you'd think so, right? Especially with those Technicolor sci-fi epics that were so popular.
Right, everyone's used to seeing things in color.
Exactly. But that's part of what makes The Angry Red Planet so unique.
So unique.
It has this raw, almost experimental feel that sets it apart from those big, glossy Hollywood productions.
It does.
It's like they're saying we're not going to sugarcoat the dangers of space exploration.
Yeah, there's a sense of claustrophobia in those Martian scenes, too.
Oh, absolutely. The limited color palette, the strange shadows, the constantly shifting light.
It all adds to that feeling of being trapped
In a hostile environment.
in an alien world.
Exactly. And that ties back to those Cold War anxieties we were talking about earlier.
The fear of the unknown.
Right, being isolated and vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a theme that resonates even today.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about the monsters or the special effects.
Right.
There's a real depth to this film that keeps people coming back to it.
Despite its low budget and some of its rough edges, the film actually got pretty good reviews.
Really?
Yeah, some critics even praised its imagination, its eerie atmosphere, and its unique visual style.
That's amazing considering they had such limited
I
resources.
know, it's really something.
It makes you think about how those constraints can actually fuel creativity.
It's like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
When you're forced to work within limitations, you have to think outside the
You have
box.
to come up with innovative solutions.
And in the case of The Angry Red Planet, those innovative solutions resulted in a film that's become a cult classic.
Something that's still talked about and admired over 60 years later.
So what does this all mean for us? What can we learn from this deep dive into The Angry Red Planet?
Well, I think it's a great reminder that you don't need a massive budget or the latest technology to tell a compelling story.
It's about having a vision,
Being resourceful,
embracing those limitations.
using those constraints to your advantage, and finding creative solutions to the challenges.
Exactly. The Angry Red Planet shows us that sometimes the most memorable and impactful works of art come from thinking differently.
Pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And pushing those boundaries can make you a better artist.
Oh, I completely agree. It forces you to focus on the core of your idea.
Strip away all the unnecessary stuff.
Yeah, and really get to the heart of what you're trying to say.
And away those imperfections, those rough edges. They give a film a certain charm and authenticity.
Yeah, it's like with handmade pottery, you know? It's the little imperfections that make each piece unique.
And special.
Exactly. Those imperfections remind you that there's a human hand behind it all.
And with The Angry Red Planet, it gives the film this kind of handcrafted, almost punk rock aesthetic.
Right. It's like they said, we're going to make this film our way.
Even if we have to use every trick in the book.
And that independent spirit really shines through. You know, it makes you appreciate the film even more.
Knowing the challenges they had to overcome.
Absolutely.
So for anyone listening who's ever felt limited by their budget or their resources,
or even their own self-doubt.
remember The Angry Red Planet?
It's a reminder that you can achieve amazing things even when the odds are stacked against you.
It really makes you wonder, what if filmmakers today were given the same budget and time constraints as The Angry Red Planet?
What kind of creative, low-budget techniques could they come up with?
How could they make their sci-fi films stand out visually?
It's a fun thought experiment. Would they go back to practical effects?
Like puppetry and stop-motion animation?
Maybe. Or perhaps they'd embrace new technologies like AI to create those unique visuals.
Who knows?
The possibilities are endless.
But we do know that limitations can often breed innovation.
That's definitely something worth remembering.
So to wrap things up, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and never be afraid to embrace those limitations.
Couldn't have said it better myself.